The wind screamed across the surface of Threshold, nine like a living thing trying to tear apart the universe itself. Lieutenant Daniel Cross pressed himself against the inner wall of the abandoned research station, watching frost creep across the reinforced windows. The glass groaned under the pressure of the storm outside, and he wondered absently if it would hold through the night. His communication array lay scattered across the metal table behind him, half-repaired circuits glowing dimly in the emergency lighting. The evacuation had happened so fast that he'd been left behind, separated from his unit, when the blizzard hit without warning. Now he waited in the old shelter, hoping the storm would break before his supplies ran out. The temperature gauge on his wrist showed minus 43 degrees outside. Inside, the failing heater kept things barely above freezing. Daniel pulled his thermal jacket tighter and returned to his work on the comm system. If he could boost the signal strength, maybe someone would hear his distress call through all that interference. He was reaching for a circuit connector when he heard it, a sound that didn't belong to the storm. A scraping against the outer door, rhythmic and weak, like something trying desperately to find a way inside. Daniel grabbed his plasma rifle and moved toward the entrance. His training screamed warnings at him. This planet was supposed to be uninhabited, a frozen rock used only for military research outposts. Nothing lived here naturally, and the evacuation had taken everyone. Everyone human. Anyway, the scraping came again, weaker this time. Daniel's finger hovered over the door release. Every instinct told him to stay inside, to protect himself, to follow protocol. But another part of him, the part that had made him good at his job because he actually cared about people, couldn't ignore that sound. He opened the door. The blizzard hit him like a physical blow, snow and ice tearing at his face. He could barely see 3 feet in front of him, but there in the swirling white, something moved. A figure collapsed against the outer wall, hands still raised as if knocking on a door that was no longer there. Daniel didn't think. He lunged forward, grabbed the figure under the arms, and hauled it inside. The body was lighter than he expected, and as he pulled it into the dim light of the shelter, he realized why. She wasn't human. The alien woman lay on his floor, her body shaking with violent tremors. Her skin had a faint luminescent quality, pale blue-white like glacial ice, covered in delicate patterns that seemed to shift and flow beneath the surface. Her hair fell in long strands of silver white, now crusted with frost. She wore only thin clothing, completely inadequate for the deadly cold outside. Daniel sealed the door and dropped to his knees beside her. Her lips had turned a darker shade of blue, and her breathing came in short, desperate gasps. Whatever species she was clearly dying of hypothermia. He didn't hesitate. He pulled off his thermal jacket and wrapped it around her, then dragged her closer to the heater. His scanner automatically activated, displaying information across his visor. Species, Corvathi. Status, critical. Body temperature, dangerously low. Threat assessment, unknown. That last part made him pause. The Corvathi were enemies in this sector. Not the worst enemies humanity faced, but not allies either. He should report this immediately, secure her, wait for instructions. Instead, he cranked the heater to maximum and grabbed every thermal blanket he had. Her eyes opened as he wrapped the second blanket around her. They were striking, a deep violet color that seemed to glow from within. She stared at him for a long moment, and Daniel saw something flicker across her face. Surprise, maybe, or fear. "Please," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the wind outside. "Don't send me back." Daniel froze. She spoke perfect English, her accent strange but understandable. "Back where?" "To them. To the ships." Her whole body shuddered, and not just from the cold. "They'll use me again. I can't go back." Before Daniel could respond, his communication array suddenly came to life. Lights flashed across the circuits he'd been repairing, and a strange signal pulsed through the system. He hadn't turned it on. It shouldn't even be functional yet. "What's happening?" he demanded, reaching for his rifle. The alien woman, still wrapped in blankets, looked at the array with an expression of pure dread. "They found me," she said. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to lead them to you." "Who found you?" The fleet. The consciousness network. She struggled to sit up, her glowing eyes meeting his. I am Vesha. I'm what they call a bridge, a living connection between minds. They created me to link with other species, to open pathways into defended systems. But I broke free during the evacuation. I thought the storm would hide me. Daniel felt cold that had nothing to do with the temperature. You're a spy. I was, Vesha said, and there were tears in her strange violet eyes. But I don't want to be anymore. I'm tired of being used, of being a tool. I came to this planet to die free rather than live as their weapon. The communication array pulsed again, brighter this time. Data streamed across Daniel's visor. Information he hadn't requested. Coordinates, ship positions, and a countdown timer that read, contact in 6 hours, 14 minutes. They're coming for you, Daniel said. Vesha nodded slowly. And now they know you're here. They'll want you too. A human soldier with communication access and defense protocols in his implants. She looked down at her glowing hands. I've killed us both by coming here. I am sorry. Daniel stood there, rifle in hand, looking at this alien woman who'd brought death to his door. The smart move was obvious. Turn her in, cooperate with whoever was coming, maybe survive. But as he watched her sitting there, wrapped in his blankets, her skin slowly returning to its natural luminescent color as warmth seeped back in her body, he thought about why he'd joined the military in the first place. To protect people, to stand between the innocent and those who would use them, even if the innocent wasn't human. How long do we have? He asked, lowering his rifle. Vesha looked up, surprise clear on her face. You're not going to restrain me? How long? 6 hours, maybe less. The storm is interfering with their scans, but once they get close enough, they'll lock onto my signal. They'll take me back, reprogram me, make me what I was before. Her voice dropped to a whisper, and they'll take you apart to understand how human minds work. Daniel moved to his equipment locker and began pulling out supplies. Extra power cells, medical supplies, his spare weapons. Then we have 6 hours to figure out how to stop them. You can't stop a Korvathi fleet, Vesha said. No one can. Daniel turned to her and smiled, though it didn't reach his eyes. You don't know much about humans, do you? We specialize in doing impossible things. He tossed her a nutrition pack and a water container. Eat something. Get your strength back. Then you're going to tell me everything about this bridge ability of yours, and we're going to find a way to turn their weapon against them. Vesha caught the supplies, staring at him like he'd lost his mind. Why would you help me? I brought them here. I'm the enemy. You're not the enemy, Daniel said, returning to his communication array. You're someone who needs help. And besides, if they want to use both of us as tools, then we have a common problem. Outside, the storm continued to rage, but inside the small shelter, something else was beginning. An alliance between two beings who should have been enemies. A connection that neither of them understood yet, but both of them desperately needed. Vesha pulled the thermal jacket tighter around herself, feeling warmth spread through her body for the first time in days. She watched the human work on his equipment, his movements quick and efficient despite the danger hanging over them both. Daniel, she said softly, reading his name from the identification patch on his uniform. Thank you for not letting me die out there. He glanced back at her, and this time his smile was real. Thank me after we survive the next 6 hours. The communication array pulsed again, and the countdown continued its relentless march toward zero. The heater hummed steadily in the corner, fighting against the cold that pressed in from every direction. Daniel worked at his communication console, his fingers moving quickly across the controls while his mind raced even faster. Vesha sat nearby, still wrapped in thermal blankets, watching him with those luminous violet eyes. Tell me how this bridge ability works, Daniel said without looking up from his screen. Everything. No secrets if we're going to survive this. Vesha hesitated, then began to speak. My people, the Korvathi, we evolved differently than humans. Our consciousness exists partly in what you would call a network. We share thoughts, feelings, information across vast distances. But we cannot do this with other species naturally. So they created bridges. Beings like me who can form connections between different kinds of minds. How many of you are there? Daniel asked. I don't know. Dozens, maybe hundreds. We're not told about each other. They keep us separate, afraid we might connect and rebel together. Her hands clenched the blanket tighter. I was made in a laboratory, Daniel. Grown from genetic material and programmed with languages, protocols, obedience commands. I have memories of a childhood that never happened, implanted to make me seem more real. Daniel finally turned to look at her. But you broke free. I started a question 3 cycles ago. Small things at first. Why did my orders sometimes contradict each other? Why did the fleet commanders look at me with disgust, even as they used my abilities? Why did I feel pain when I formed connections they forced me to make? She looked down at her glowing hands. Then during the evacuation of this planet, there was chaos. The storm came suddenly, communications broke down. In that confusion, I ran. I deleted my tracking protocols and escaped. But they found you anyway, Daniel said. They found you, Vesha corrected. Your implants, your communication systems. When I got close to this shelter, my passive scanning connected with your equipment automatically. It's part of what I am. I can't completely turn it off. The fleet detected that connection and locked onto it. Daniel cursed softly and returned to his console. The countdown now showed 5 hours and 42 minutes. So what exactly can you do with this bridge ability? What were they going to use you for? Vesha stood slowly, letting the blankets fall away. She moved closer to him, and Daniel noticed how gracefully she moved despite her recent brush with death. Her skin still glowed faintly, those shifting patterns beneath the surface pulsing gently like a slow heartbeat. I can create pathways between minds, she said. Touch creates the strongest connection, but proximity works too. With humans, it's harder because your minds work so differently from ours. Your thoughts are chaotic, emotional, unpredictable. That's why they want human bridges so badly. If they could understand how your minds function, they could predict your military strategies, break your encryption, infiltrate your defense networks. And you were supposed to be their key to doing that, Daniel said. Yes, they were going to have me connect with human prisoners, map their consciousness patterns, then use that information to create weapons against your people. She was very close now, close enough that he could feel warmth radiating from her skin. But Daniel works both ways. If I connect with you voluntarily, if you open your mind willingly, we could send something back through the link when they come. Something they won't expect. Daniel stood to face her properly. They were nearly the same height, her eyes level with his. What kind of something? Human emotion, human chaos. Everything that makes your species impossible for them to predict. Her voice dropped lower, more intimate. The Korvathi consciousness network operates on logic, efficiency, predictable patterns. They've never encountered something truly chaotic in their system. Your fear, your anger, your love, your contradictions. All of it could act like a virus in their network. Could act like, Daniel repeated. You're not certain. I've never tried it. I don't know what will happen. She raised her hand slowly, giving him time to move away. But I know what will happen if we do nothing. They'll take us both. They'll strip your mind apart piece by piece until they understand how humans think. And they'll reprogram me so thoroughly that this version of me, the one who learned to choose, will cease to exist. Daniel looked at her hand, suspended in the air between them. Outside, the wind howled louder, and somewhere in the darkness above, ships were moving closer. The countdown ticked forward. 5 hours and 38 minutes. What I need to do, he asked. Trust me, Vesha said simply. Open your mind and trust me. Daniel had spent his entire military career being trained not to trust, to verify, to maintain security protocols. Everything in his training screamed at him that this was a trap, a manipulation, exactly what an enemy infiltrator would do. But he looked into those violet eyes and saw something his training couldn't account for. Genuine fear, genuine hope. A person, not a weapon, asking for help. He took her hand. The effect was immediate and overwhelming. Daniel gasped as sensation flooded through him. Not physical, but mental, emotional. He could feel Vesha's presence in his mind, careful and gentle, like someone walking quietly through a sacred space. And through her, He could sense himself as she perceived him. He saw his own loneliness, sharper than he'd realized. The isolation of being left behind, the fear he'd been pushing down, the determination that kept him working even when hope seemed distant. But he also saw his curiosity, his compassion, the part of him that had opened the door to a dying stranger without hesitation. And from Vesha, he received a flood of memories and emotions that weren't his own. He saw her creation, the laboratory where she'd first opened her eyes to bright lights and cold faces. He felt her confusion as implanted memories conflicted with her actual experiences. He experienced her pain every time they'd forced her to connect with unwilling minds, to violate the consciousness of prisoners who screamed inside their own heads. He felt her joy when she'd first tasted real food, not the nutrient paste they fed bridges. Her wonder at seeing a natural sunset on some distant world. Her growing horror as she realized what she was being used for. And finally, her desperate decision to run, to choose death over enslavement. "I'm sorry," Vesha whispered, and Daniel realized tears were streaming down her face. "I'm sorry you have to feel all of this." "Don't be," Daniel managed to say. His own eyes were wet. "I understand now. I understand you." The connection pulsed stronger, deeper. Daniel felt warmth spreading through his body that had nothing to do with the heater. Vesha stepped closer, her free hand coming up to rest against his chest. He could feel her heartbeat through the connection, fast and strong, matching the rhythm of his own. "This is dangerous," she said softly. "The deeper we connect, the harder it will be to separate. We could lose ourselves in each other." "Is that what you want?" Daniel asked. "To separate?" Vesha's fingers curled into the fabric of his shirt. "No," she admitted. "I've been alone my entire existence. Created alone, kept alone, used alone. This feeling, having someone understand me, truly understand me, without words or explanations, it's the most incredible thing I've ever experienced." Daniel felt the truth of her words through their link. He also felt his own response, his own deep need for connection that he'd buried under years of duty and discipline. They were two lonely souls finding each other in the middle of a frozen wasteland with death approaching from above. "The fleet will detect this," Vesha said. "They'll know we're connecting. It might make them come faster." "Let them come," Daniel said, surprising himself with the fierceness in his voice. "Let them see what happens when they try to use people as weapons. We'll show them chaos." Vesha smiled, the first real smile he'd seen from her. It transformed her face, making her look younger, more alive. "Yes," she said. "Chaos." The connection between them flared brighter. Daniel pulled her closer, wrapping his arms around her, and she melted against him. The physical contact intensified everything. He could feel her relief, her gratitude, her growing affection for him. And she could feel his protective instinct, his attraction to her despite the impossibility of their situation, his fierce determination that they would survive this together. "Show me how to weaponize this," Daniel said into her hair. "Show me how to turn what we're feeling into something they can't handle." Vesha pulled back slightly to look at him. "It will hurt. Not physically, but mentally. We'll have to amplify every emotion, every chaotic thought, every unpredictable impulse. Then when they connect to retrieve me, we flood the link with all of it at once." "But Daniel, you could lose parts of yourself. Memories could become confused. Your sense of identity could fragment." "What about you?" "I'm already fragmented," she said with a sad smile. "I'm already not sure what's real and what was programmed. But you're whole. I don't want to break you." Daniel cupped her face gently in his hands. "Then we'll hold each other together. Whatever happens, we face it connected, understood, not alone." "Not alone," Vesha echoed, and the words carried the weight of a promise. They stayed like that for a long moment, foreheads touching, breathing in sync, their minds intertwined in ways neither of them fully understood. The shelter around them seemed to fade away. The storm outside became distant. All that existed was this connection, this impossible bond between human and alien, soldier and bridge, two broken pieces finding a way to fit together. The communication console beeped urgently. The countdown had changed. 3 hours and 15 minutes. The fleet had accelerated. Daniel and Vesha separated slightly, but kept holding hands, maintaining their connection. They detected us, Vesha confirmed. They know I've formed a voluntary bond. They're coming faster now. Good, Daniel said, moving to his weapons locker. That means they're worried. Let's give them something to really worry about. He began pulling out equipment, his tactical mind already forming plans even as his emotional mind remained open to Vesha. She watched him work, feeling his determination through their link. You're remarkable, she said softly. Your people are remarkable. You face impossible odds, and somehow you find hope. Daniel glanced at her and grinned. That's the human specialty. We're too stubborn to quit and too crazy to know when we're beaten. He tossed her a tactical vest. Put this on. If we're going to fight a consciousness network with the power of human emotions, we should at least look professional while doing it. Vesha caught the vest and laughed, the sound bright and clear. Through their connection, Daniel felt her surprise at her own laughter. She hadn't laughed in years, maybe never genuinely. The sensation of her joy, mixed with his own satisfaction at making her laugh, created a feedback loop of positive emotion that pulsed through their bond. This is what they can't understand, Vesha said, pulling on the vest. This lightness in the face of darkness. This joy in impossible moments. They'll analyze it, try to quantify it, and fail completely. Then let's make sure we give them plenty to analyze, Daniel said. He finished arming himself and moved back to her. Ready? Vesha took his hand again, their fingers interlacing naturally. The connection between them was a living thing now, growing stronger with each passing minute. Ready, she confirmed. Let's show them what chaos really means. Together, they turned to face the communication console and the countdown timer that continued its relentless march. 3 hours and 8 minutes until the fleet arrived. 3 hours to prepare their impossible defense. 3 hours to weaponize the connection between a human soldier and an alien bridge who'd both chosen to fight for their freedom. Outside, the storm began to ease slightly, and through the thinning clouds, the first distant lights of approaching ships began to glow in the dark sky. The emergency lights in the shelter cast long shadows across the walls as Daniel and Vesha prepared for what was coming. The connection between them hummed constantly now, a living thread of shared consciousness that grew stronger with every passing moment. Daniel could feel Vesha's presence in the back of his mind like a warm light, and through their bond, he knew she felt him the same way. 2 hours and 43 minutes, Vesha said, watching the countdown on the console. Her voice was steady, but through their link, Daniel felt her anxiety mixing with determination. The lead ship will enter atmosphere in 90 minutes. That's when they'll try to establish full connection with me. Daniel finished configuring his last piece of equipment, a signal amplifier he'd rigged to boost their mental connection. And that's when we hit them with everything we've got. Everything we are, Vesha corrected softly. She stood and moved to stand beside him, their shoulders touching. The physical contact sent another pulse of warmth through their bond. Daniel, I need you to understand something. When we flood their network with human emotion, with your chaos, it won't be controlled. Everything you've ever felt, every memory, every fear and hope and dream, all of it will pour through me into their consciousness. There will be no privacy, no secrets. Daniel turned to face her fully. Through their connection, he could feel what she was really asking. She wanted to know if he was prepared to be completely vulnerable, to let an entire alien fleet see into the deepest parts of his soul. I've spent my life keeping people at a distance, he admitted. Stayed professional, followed protocols, never let anyone get too close. It seems safer that way. He reached up to brush a strand of silver hair from her face, marveling at how natural the gesture felt. But right now, connected to you, letting you see everything I am, I realize I've been missing something crucial. Connection isn't weakness. It's strength. Vesha's eyes shimmered with emotion. Your people have a word for what I'm feeling right now, don't they? A specific word for this warmth, this need to be close to you, this willingness to fight impossible odds just to keep you safe. Love, Daniel said simply. We call it love. Love, Vesha repeated, testing the word. Through their bond, Daniel felt her examine the concept, turning it over in her consciousness like a precious gem. The Korvathi have nothing like this. We have loyalty to the network, efficiency and purpose, but not this. Not this fierce, burning need to protect another being even at cost to yourself. Then they're missing out on the best part of being alive, Daniel said. He pulled her close, wrapping his arms around her. And we're going to show them exactly what they've been missing. Vesha pressed her face against his chest, listening to his heartbeat. I'm afraid, she whispered, not of dying, but of losing this. Of losing you. Of being reprogrammed back into emptiness. That's not going to happen, Daniel said fiercely. We're going to burn so bright in their consciousness that they'll never forget us. And when it's over, we're walking out of here together. Promise me something, Vesha said, pulling back to look at him. If something goes wrong, if they start to take me, if I begin to change back into what they made me, promise you'll end it. Don't let them turn me into a weapon again. Daniel felt his heart clench. Vesha, promise me, Daniel. Please. I'd rather die as myself than live as their tool. He looked into her violet eyes and saw absolute certainty there. Through their bond, he felt her resolve, unshakable and clear. I promise, he said finally, but it won't come to that. We're going to win. The communication console erupted with new signals. Multiple contacts entering the upper atmosphere, descending rapidly. The countdown jumped forward. 1 hour and 57 minutes. They're here early, Vesha said, her body tensing. They must be more eager than I thought. Daniel moved to the console and activated his modifications. The signal amplifier powered up, humming with energy. Then let's not keep them waiting. Are you ready to show them real chaos? Vesha joined him, placing her hand on the amplifier. Her skin began to glow brighter, the patterns beneath the surface pulsing rapidly. I'm opening the connection protocols now. When their lead ship tries to link with me, instead of a passive bridge, they're going to find a highway going both directions. Daniel placed his hand over hers on the amplifier. The moment they touched, the connection between them exploded into something more powerful than either had expected. He gasped as sensation overwhelmed him. Every emotion he'd ever felt seemed to surface at once. Joy and sorrow, fear and courage, loneliness and love, all swirling together in a maelstrom of pure human experience. Through Vesha, he could sense the approaching fleet. Thousands of Korvathi minds linked in their network, operating with cold precision and calculating efficiency. They were excited, in their own emotionless way, about retrieving their lost bridge and capturing a human subject for study. They had no idea what was waiting for them. They're initiating contact, Vesha said, her voice strained. I can feel them reaching for me, trying to establish control. Daniel now, give me everything. Daniel didn't hold back. He opened every locked door in his mind, tore down every wall he'd built around his heart. He flooded their connection with memories of his childhood, running through summer fields and laughing with friends. He poured in his grief when his father died, the raw, aching loss that never fully healed. He added his pride when he graduated from the academy, his fear during his first combat mission, his guilt over the soldiers he couldn't save. And then he added something the Korvathi could never have predicted, his feelings for Vesha, the attraction that had sparked the moment he saw her, the protectiveness that grew as he listened to her story, the deepening affection as they connected, and yes, the love that had bloomed impossibly fast but felt more real than anything he'd experienced before. All of it poured through their bond, through Vesha, and into the reaching consciousness of the Korvathi fleet. The effect was instantaneous and catastrophic. The fleet's network, designed for logical processing and efficient information transfer, suddenly found itself flooded with raw, unfiltered human emotion. Daniel's chaos crashed through their systems like a tidal wave through a carefully organized library. The Korvathi minds recoiled, trying to process what they were receiving and failing completely. How could one being contain so many contradictions? How could Daniel be both afraid and brave at the same time? How could he feel grief and joy simultaneously? How could his love for Vesha coexist with his awareness that she was technically his enemy? The questions cascaded through the network, multiplying, creating paradoxes that the Korvathi logic couldn't resolve. And behind every question, more emotions flooded in. Daniel's stubborn refusal to give up, his wild hope in the face of impossible odds, his fierce determination to protect what he loved no matter the cost. Vesha cried out, her body shaking as the feedback intensified. "It's working," she gasped. "They're confused, fragmenting. Their decision-making protocols are crashing. But Daniel, it's too much. The connection is burning too hot. We have to pull back or we'll both be destroyed." "Not yet," Daniel growled, gripping her hand tighter. "Push harder. Show them what happens when they try to use people as weapons. Show them the cost of treating consciousness as a tool." Through their bond, he felt Vesha make a decision. She stopped merely channeling his emotions and added her own. Her pain at being created without choice. Her rage at years of violation and forced connections. Her desperate hunger for freedom. And matching his own feelings, her love for this impossible human who'd saved her life and given her hope. The combined force of their emotions, human and Korvathi, soldier and bridge, two souls choosing each other against everything their worlds told them, created something entirely new. Something the fleet had never encountered and could never have prepared for. The Korvathi network began to collapse. Ships in orbit veered off course as pilots lost connection to Central Command. The lead vessel attempting to land spiraled away, its systems overwhelmed. Through the connection, Daniel and Vesha could feel thousands of individual Korvathi minds suddenly cut off from their network, experiencing isolation for the first time in their lives. It was terrifying for them. It was also liberating. "They're retreating," Vesha said, wonder in her voice. "The whole fleet is pulling back. They can't handle the feedback. We did it, Daniel. We actually did it." But the victory came with a cost. The connection between Daniel and Vesha had burned so bright, so intensely, that it had fundamentally changed them both. Daniel could still feel Vesha in his mind, but now it was permanent, woven into the fabric of his consciousness. And he knew without asking that she felt the same. Part of him now lived in her, and part of her lived in him. They were bound together in a way that no surgeon could separate, no distance could diminish. As the last of the Korvathi ships disappeared beyond the atmosphere, Daniel and Vesha collapsed together onto the floor of the shelter. They lay tangled in each other's arms, breathing hard, their minds still spinning from what they'd just done. "We should probably be worried about the consequences," Daniel said eventually. "I just helped an enemy combatant attack her own fleet. You just committed treason against your people. We're both probably going to court-martial." Vesha laughed weakly. "Worth it. Absolutely worth it," Daniel agreed. He turned his head to look at her, this extraordinary being who'd crashed into his life and changed everything. "So what do we do now?" Vesha met his eyes, and through their permanent bond, he felt her considering possibilities. "We could run, find a neutral planet, hide, build a life together. We could surrender, try to explain what happened, hope our people understand." Or, Vesha said slowly, a new idea forming in both their minds simultaneously through their connection. "We could become something new, a real bridge, not a weapon, but a diplomat. Proof that humans and Korvathi can connect, can understand each other, can choose cooperation over conflict." Daniel felt hope spark in his chest. That's incredibly idealistic and probably impossible. "So, with surviving the last 3 hours," Vesha pointed out. "Fair point." Daniel pulled her closer, marveling at how perfectly she fit against him. "Together, then. Whatever comes next, we face it together." "Together," Vesha agreed, and sealed the promise with a kiss that sent warmth flooding through their shared consciousness. Outside, the storm had finally broken. The first rays of dawn light filtered through the shelter windows, painting everything in shades of gold and pink. The communication console beeped softly, receiving incoming signals. Rescue ships, human ones this time, responding to his distress call. Daniel and Vesha stood, still holding hands, their connection humming contentedly between them. They'd survived the impossible. They'd turned a weapon into a bond, transformed chaos into strength, chosen love in the face of certain death. The universe would have opinions about what they'd done. There would be questions, investigations, debates about whether their connection was dangerous or revolutionary. But in that moment, standing together in the morning light, two beings from different worlds who'd found something precious in each other, none of that mattered. They'd regretted nothing, and they never would.